Have you ever wondered why so many astronauts simply refuse to answer some questions about what they saw in space? Why does NASA never release 100% raw images from space missions? What is behind this carefully controlled silence? Isn't it strange that, even in the era of digital transparency, there are entire parts of space transmissions that are cut, censored, or simply disappear from the official archives? For decades, NASA has cultivated an image as a scientific authority, an agency, dedicated to exploring the unknown. But what if I told you that part of that unknown is being hidden from us? Documents labeled top secret, leaked audios that were quickly deleted from the internet, and astronauts who, after years of silence, only released cryptic phrases like, "We weren't alone up there." Coincidence? Or part of something much bigger? This is where the story starts to get interesting and dangerous. There are reports that astronauts are required to sign clauses that prevent them from revealing certain events that occur in space. Some of this information would be linked to unidentified objects, anomalous behavior emissions, and even signs of life. Yes, life outside Earth. But the burning question is, why hide it? Who benefits from this silence? NASA itself, which positions itself as the official source of space truth, has avoided directly confronting these suspicions. And the more they avoid it, the more questions arise. Some images captured on the Apollo missions show structures that do not look like natural formations. In live broadcasts from the International Space Station, there have been sudden cuts seconds after mysterious objects enter the scene. Technical coincidence? Or a coordinated operation to prevent the population from seeing something they shouldn't? Most disturbing of all, when former employees try to speak out. When former astronauts mention inexplicable things, they are quickly discredited, ridiculed, or simply forgotten. But in this video, we're going to do it the other way around. Let's connect the dots, listen to those who tried to speak up, and analyze the signs that have been ignored for years. Because if NASA really is hiding something, maybe now is the right time to finally find out what they're trying to cover up. What if this has been going on for longer than we realize? If astronauts have been silenced for decades, what else is being hidden from humanity? The truth may be closer than ever, but only for those willing to look beyond the surface. So what will you see in this video? May not last long online. This content disappears, now you know why. There are forces that don't want this information to circulate, that prefer to keep you in the dark while the secrets of the universe are decided behind closed doors. Then pay attention to every detail. Because in the next few minutes, we will reveal leaked documents, excerpts from forgotten interviews, and statements that were never explained by NASA. You will understand why certain reports were archived, and why so many questions remain unanswered. But before we continue, if you value the truth and believe that everyone has the right to know what is really happening beyond Earth, leave your like right now. This shows the algorithm and those trying to hide this information that they are still curious. Questioning people who do not accept a superficial version of the facts, it is clear. Subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell, because the next videos will bring even more revelations about NASA's secret operations, hidden messages and space transmissions, and what no one has the courage to say it out loud. Space is full of mysteries, and we will expose each one of them. Now get ready, because what comes next could completely change the way you see space, NASA, and reality itself. And this is exactly where everything starts to make less sense. In the information age, where everything is recorded, shared, and viralized in seconds, how is it possible that entire statements by astronauts simply disappear? How can interviews be edited minutes after they air? And why doesn't anyone at NASA clearly explain the reason for these cuts? These strange pauses. These visibly uncomfortable reactions from those who have already been out there, observing something that we could never understand. You are about to understand why this happens, It is no exaggeration to say that some of the universe's greatest truths may be being hidden right now, and that you, as a conscious spectator, need to see beyond the curtain. Because it's not just about space technology. It's not just about trips to the moon or Mars or the International Space Station. We're talking about control of information, about who decides what you should or shouldn't know. In recent decades, several internal documents have been leaked. Documents with maximum security seals, which state that astronauts, when entering NASA missions, sign confidentiality agreements. Clauses of absolute silence, where certain experiences, visions, encounters, or situations must be kept completely confidential, even after the end of the mission. You heard right, even after returning to Earth. They remain forbidden to speak, and this raises a question that completely changes the direction of the conversation. What is so serious, so impactful, or so unbelievable that it needs to be erased from the collective memory? The answer is not in the official NASA videos, but in the leaks, in the recovered excerpts, in the erased audios that circulate on obscure forums and closed groups. In one of these audios recovered from an Apollo 11 broadcast, one of the astronauts said, "They're here, watching, and we're not allowed to talk about it." This recording, of course, was quickly denied by official sources, labeled as a montage. But curiously, the original file ... disappeared. It's always like this. Every time something escapes, there is a desperate attempt to reverse it. NASA publishes a note, the traditional press ignores the matter, and social networks label it as misinformation, but the pattern repeats itself. And the scariest thing, the deeper you delve into the behind the scenes of space exploration, the clearer it becomes that there is a narrative being carefully controlled. Have you ever noticed how astronauts, when asked about possible contacts with UFOs, unidentified objects, strange lights, or unexplained sounds, always deflect the answer? Do they use humor, laugh nervously, or simply change the subject? This doesn't happen by chance. Many of them have already admitted, in informal conversations, that there are clear instructions about what can and cannot be said to the public. And if you think this is all recent, think again. Since NASA's first space missions, back in the 1960s, there have been reports of interference, interrupted radio signals, and confidential recordings. In a 1969 mission, for example, an external signal of unknown origin was recorded that caused momentary panic among the team. To this day, there is no explanation. The technical report, when requested via the Access to Information Law, came with entire sections censored, covered by black stripes. Coincidence, or a systematic practice of concealment? And if you think that all this is in the past, you are wrong. Today, with advances in live broadcasts, NASA's behavior is even more curious. Several lives made directly from the International Space Station are mysteriously interrupted precisely at the moment when something abnormal appears on the screen. A point of light moves on an unusual trajectory. A shadow crosses the external display. An unidentified object approaches. And suddenly, the transmission drops out. The official explanation: technical problems. Always technical problems. But now we have tools to record these falls, save the files, and analyze frame by frame. And when you do that, when you really look closely, the questions multiply. What are these lights? Why isn't NASA speaking out clearly? Why are the most common questions from the public precisely the ones that are never answered? Can you understand the gravity of this? We're not talking about a simple miscommunication, but an organized structure to limit what reaches you. There is clear, precise, and meticulous narrative control over everything involving astronauts and their reports, especially when the subject is beyond the scientifically explainable. Astronauts, public figures, and modern heroes have become cogs in a machine that filters information based on interests that we may never fully understand. And this filtering happens before our eyes. When a more incisive question is asked in an interview, the answer is cut off. When someone mentions something different during a broadcast, the excerpt is removed. When former employees try to expose behind-the-scenes stories, their accounts are erased, dismissed, or classified as conspiracy theories. But if it was all just speculation, why so much effort to hide it? The answer may lie in fear. Fear that humanity will discover something for which it is not yet prepared. Fear of the collapse of beliefs. Fear of the unknown. And meanwhile, we here on Earth continue to receive a carefully edited version of reality. That's why videos like this are so important. Because if you depend on official channels, you will never hear these reports. You will never see these images. You will never know that there are astronauts who saw something up there and were forbidden to tell. So, if you've been with me this far, it's because you also feel that there is something wrong, something hidden, something that doesn't add up. And I want to ask you something now. Comment below, I want the truth. If you also believe that NASA is hiding more than it reveals. Write it exactly like this. I want the truth. This will show that you are part of this search for real answers. And if you've ever heard of a similar case, of an astronaut who said something strange, or if you saw a NASA image that disappeared. From the internet, comment too. Your experience can be part of the puzzle. And this is precisely where everything starts to get even darker. Because it's one thing to hear theories, speculations, hypotheses about what can be happening to astronauts and NASA broadcasts. Another thing completely different and much more serious is to observe your own real reports from those who were there in space and came back with something to tell. But he couldn't. Or worse, he was not allowed to tell. Let's start with one of the best-known names in the history of space exploration, Buzz Aldrin, the second man to set foot on the moon. For years, Buzz avoided interviews that touched on topics outside the traditional script of the Apollo 11 mission. However, in a little-known interview, he mentioned having seen something inexplicable while in space. His exact words were, "There was something out there. Something that moved intelligently, but it was not part of our ship." These statements caused enormous discomfort at the time. NASA's response: silence. And worse, the original interview was edited. The excerpt disappeared from the main files. And the reporter responsible, curiously, never spoke about the topic again. And this is repeated with other names. Gordon Cooper, one of the Mercury Project astronauts, was one of the first to report seeing unidentified flying objects while on mission. Cooper even wrote a letter to the United Nations reporting his experiences, stating that he witnessed flying vehicles with technology far beyond what we know. But soon after, he stopped talking about the matter publicly. In later interviews, he would look away, become visibly uncomfortable, or give vague answers, as if he were dealing with an internal tension between what he wanted to reveal and what was permitted to say. These are not made-up reports. They are testimonials from elite astronauts, people trained at the highest level, who have undergone years of technical, psychological, and military training. We're not talking about amateurs or conspiracy theorists. We're talking about men who risked their lives in the name of science and came back with something too disturbing to reveal. And the pattern is always the same. Impose silence. There is even an expression among the astronauts themselves, which many avoid saying in public, but circulates behind the scenes and private forums. The so-called orbital pact of silence. It's not official, it's not in the manual, but it's an unwritten rule, a kind of mutual understanding between those who went and returned. They know that there are topics that should not be talked about. And when someone gets too close to these issues, be it a journalist or an independent scientist, NASA's official response is always evasive. "We don't have concrete evidence" is repeated like a mantra, even when there are videos, audios, and documents pointing out the opposite. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to set foot on the moon, stated several times that he believed that NASA together with the United States government, hid information about extraterrestrial contacts. He was emphatic in saying that we are not alone in the universe, and that there were solid evidence being kept from the public. What happened after these statements? Mitchell was the target of an intense campaign of discredit, being labeled as eccentric, mystical, emotionally unstable. The classic institutional, silencing script disguised as concern for the astronaut's reputation. Another intriguing case involves Don Pettit, NASA astronaut with more than 370 days in space. In an informal conversation, broadcast live, he released a sentence that was quickly cut. Sometimes we see things up there that we can't explain, and we learn not to talk about it too much. The live broadcast ended seconds later, and the original video was replaced by an edited version. But it is clear that part of the content had been recorded by attentive internet users who began to share the excerpt on the networks. Result, the content was taken down on several platforms for violating guidelines. But what guidelines would those be? Those that protect national security or those that protect the truth? And speaking of national security, this is precisely the argument most used to justify secrets. The idea is that certain information, if released, could shake public order, cause panic, or threaten the integrity of NASA operations. But who defines what should or should not be revealed? Who chooses what the population can or cannot know? There are also records of leaked documents, some of them rescued by hackers and former employees, who indicate the existence of a protocol called Omega Protocol. This supposed protocol defines the exact steps to be taken if an astronaut witnesses or records something unusual, such as an unknown ship, unauthorized communication, or any form of alien life. The protocol, if real, indicates that the astronaut must make a coded recording, send it via an isolated channel, and never comment on the matter. Even after returning to Earth, a true institutionalized code of silence. But don't think that all this only happens in the United States. Several Russian astronauts have also reported witnessing inexplicable events in space. Some of them spoke of pulsating lights that followed their capsules, metallic noises coming from outside the ship, even when there was no movement, and even appearances of luminous forms that seemed to observe their missions. When questioned, Russia's space agencies gave the same evasive answers. Technical failure, optical illusion, natural phenomenon. Always a ready justification, never a real investigation. And why does this matter so much? Because we are talking about a global narrative, an omission coordinated by space agencies from different countries, who prefer to keep the public in the dark rather than deal with the impact of the truth. And if all astronauts, American, Russian, European, are being told to keep silent, what is so scary or extraordinary are they seeing out there? If you've been following this video so far, it's because something inside you also feels like there are pieces out of place. And maybe, together, we can start to put this puzzle together. Therefore, I want you to comment below one word that says a lot. Silenced. Write it like this, in all letters. If you believe that astronauts are being silenced, and that the truth needs to come out, comment silenced. And if you remember any case, any interview, any moment when you notice something strange being cut, write it here too. Let's turn this comment section into a living archive of what many try to erase. And in the face of so many silenced reports, cut interviews, and evidence that mysteriously disappears, an inevitable question begins to echo more strongly among those who are really paying attention. What if NASA knows a lot more than it's willing to admit? We're not just talking about miscommunication or the classic "we can neither confirm nor deny" that they love to repeat. We are talking about a systematic, sophisticated, and extremely well-coordinated cover-up structure, an information control network that goes far beyond what most people imagine. There is a theory widely discussed in private forums. groups of independent researchers, and even among former members of the space agency itself, which states that astronauts are not only explorers of the cosmos, but also secret keepers. A term often used in these circles is the Orbital Silence Compact, a supposed unofficial agreement, but real enough to be respected by everyone who goes to space. That defines the limits of what can and cannot be shared with the public. According to this theory, behind the scientific facade, behind the technical speeches and diplomatic explanations, there is something much bigger being intentionally hidden. But what exactly is NASA hiding? There are several hypotheses, and all of them deeply disturbing. The first, perhaps the most popular, involves contact with extraterrestrial life forms. Not necessarily beings with a science fiction appearance, but non-human intelligences. Entities with a proven presence in orbital and interplanetary missions. There are reports that suggest that these encounters have already taken place, that they were documented and immediately classified as top secrets. The second hypothesis involves artificial structures on other celestial bodies, such as the Moon, Mars, and some of Jupiter's moons. Yes, we are talking about constructions, geometric formations that clearly indicate that they are not natural. Leaked images, comparisons made between original versions and public editions reveal shocking differences. What was once a shadow or a common crater now appears to be a symmetrical structure, with right angles, towers, tunnels. And every time this evidence begins to gain repercussions, it is labeled as pareidolias or visual illusions. And, of course, they quickly disappear from the internet. Another alarming point of this theory is the possibility of parallel space programs, secret operations conducted by agencies within NASA itself, or even by private, military, or intergovernmental consortiums that would be operating in regions of space never revealed to the public. These operations would have as main objective investigate or explore locations that harbor technologies of non-terrestrial origin, or even abandoned structures of ancient cosmic civilizations. This would explain why so many files are classified, why so many images of the Moon and Mars appear purposefully distorted, low resolution, or incomplete. But perhaps the most disconcerting part of this theory is the fact that humanity itself may already be involved in something much greater than it can comprehend. A classic example, the so-called Lunar Treaty, an international agreement that theoretically prevents the military occupation of space and celestial bodies. The detail, the most confidential clauses of this treaty talk about preservation of the biological and technological integrity of other entities. This phrase, as vague as it is provocative, has already been the subject of numerous independent investigations. Who would these entities be? What kind of technology needs to be preserved? And why are astronauts, who are supposed to report all their discoveries to humanity, forced to remain silent? There are also a series of comparative records that point out differences between official images released by NASA and the original versions obtained by internal sources. In one of these cases, a photograph taken by the Curiosity probe on Mars showed what appeared to be a partially buried metallic structure. In the public image, this same region appears covered in shadow and with drastically reduced resolution. Was it just a technical correction? Or are we facing an intentional process of image manipulation which aims to hide signs of advanced technology? On other planets, the deep web forums, where independent researchers share these images and cross-reference data, are full of visual comparisons that suggest that there is an active disinformation campaign where true data is mixed with noise to discredit any serious investigation. They call this digital camouflage, a technique that consists of inserting false elements into real documents to create confusion, meaning that even those who find something relevant cannot prove its authenticity. Another strong indication of the existence of something bigger is the massive investments in unmanned missions, but with increasingly strange objectives. Why send probes to study specific areas of Mars, always the same regions, and never release images in real time? Why are billions being spent on telescopes that search for signs of life, but the data collected is confidential and rarely shared with the public? The most plausible answer, according to this theory, is that there is already knowledge about these life forms or structures. And now the goal is just to understand how to deal with it without causing mass panic. Many experts claim that NASA maintains a protocol not only of secrecy, but of public conditioning. This means that part of your mission today would be to adapt the population to a future where the truth will gradually begin to leak out through films, series, books, and simulations. The term used by some former employees is cognitive acclimatization. That is, preparing the collective unconscious to gradually accept that we are not alone, that the universe is inhabited, and that we have been observed for a long time. But what really draws attention to this theory is that it doesn't just come from amateurs, conspiracists, or alternative YouTubers. She is powered by scientists, former military personnel, former NASA engineers, and even former astronauts who, under anonymity, began to speak. And they all have different versions, but with one thing in common. NASA knows. He knows more than he admits, and he chose not to tell. If you've come this far, it's because you feel something is wrong, something out of the norm, something no one wants to question anymore. So comment below, NASA knows, if you also believe that there is information being hidden from us. Write it exactly like this: NASA knows. And if you've seen a strange image, heard a cut interview, or have your own theory about what's behind so much secrecy, share it with us. Your opinion could be the missing piece in this cosmic puzzle. And if so far the reports, theories, and silences have left you uneasy, get ready, because what comes now is concrete evidence. Visual evidence, classified documents, leaked audio, and fragments of real missions that escaped NASA's control and that today circulate in underground internet archives, private forums, and mirrored servers around the world. Evidence that, instead of being clearly refuted, was simply erased. Let's start with one of the most impressive cases from the 90s. During a live broadcast of a space mission carried out in 1996, a snippet of audio was accidentally leaked. In this audio, it was possible to clearly hear two astronauts discussing something that appeared on the outside of the ship. The words spoken were enigmatic, but impactful. It's getting closer. It's not ours, ... It's not in the mission plan. Minutes later, the transmission was interrupted. In its place, a blue screen with the NASA logo and the message: "We are experiencing technical difficulties. We will be back shortly." But that instant never came back. That part of the mission disappeared from official records. But, as happens, when the truth wants to be seen, someone recorded it. An amateur radio operator who followed the transmissions on a parallel channel recorded this excerpt. The audio, even though distorted, was saved and shared on investigation forums. For a little while, in less than 24 hours, most of the links were taken down. Videos deleted for guideline violations, accounts suspended, forums hacked. But still, copies circulate. Audios like this are true rare gems for anyone looking to understand what is being hidden. And what about the images? There are dozens, perhaps hundreds of captures made by NASA's own probes and cameras in which they appear unidentified flying objects, unusual structures, signs of movement on lunar or Martian soil, and even shadows that have no logical explanation within the context of the missions. A classic example is the image captured during the Apollo 17 mission, which shows a cylindrical structure suspended on the lunar horizon. When questioned, NASA responded that it was just an exposure failure. However, image analysis experts disagree. The geometry of the structure, alignment with sunlight, and lack of overlap with the terrain indicate that was there. It was physical. It had shape. It had volume. Another case that went viral for a few hours before disappearing was that of the STS-75 mission. During this Space Shuttle Columbia mission, an experimental tether more than 20 kilometers long was launched into space as part of a scientific test. The surprise, when the camera started recording the rope floating, dozens of circular objects began to appear around her. Objects with intelligent movements, some approaching, others keeping their distance, and all clearly interested in the experiment. The images are impressive. They don't look like space junk. They don't look like reflections. They seem something watching. And as expected, NASA gave a generic answer: optical effects caused by particles close to the lens. But again, independent analysts showed that the objects were miles away from the camera, and some even changed their route autonomously. This is not a reflection. This is not static. This is behavior. And there is more. Much more. Internal documents. Marked top secret, copies of which were provided by NASA insiders, revealed the use of terms such as conscious anomaly, unauthorized presence, and activity in uninhabited zones. These terms appear in technical reports written by astronauts, engineers, and mission analysts. These are not fictional terms. These are technical, cold, formal records, which should be accessible to the public, but were locked in restricted access files. Only a select few can see them. And when an outsider tries to open these files, the response is always the same: classified for national security reasons. You might be wondering, why classify? Why hide something that could represent a gigantic advance for science, for human knowledge? The answer may lie in fear. Fear of losing control of the narrative. Fear of recognizing that we are not alone. Fear of admitting that the universe is much more inhabited and much more organized than NASA has ever revealed. And when we talk about documents, we're not just talking about texts. Many of these files are accompanied by visual records. Radar captures showing anomalous movements outside the crew's field of vision. There are thermal images that reveal sources of intense heat appearing out of nowhere and disappearing seconds later. There are records of sound frequencies captured by probes that no one can decode. Sounds that seem like voices, organic noises, living pulsations, but that, officially, are ignored now. Stop and think. If all this is true, and there is enough evidence to believe that it is, then we are facing the greatest occultation in the history of humanity. A concealment carried out not by any government, but by one of the most respected institutions on the planet. NASA, an agency that at first glance represents progress, science, discovery. But that, in deeper layers, may be covering up the most important truth of all: that humanity has already had contact with the unknown, and he decided to hide it. And while this evidence is erased, silenced, or classified, we continue to receive edited images, cut videos, and evasive answers. But the internet is relentless. Someone always saves, always shares, always investigates. And that's why you're here, because you also feel like there is something too big being kept secret. If you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Comment now: I saw the evidence. If you also believe that this evidence is real and is being covered up. Write exactly like this: I saw the evidence. This will show that you are part of the group that no longer accepts silence, who wants to see everything being revealed. And if you've seen any of these images, videos, or audios being removed from the internet, or if you know of any leaks involving NASA, write here in the comments. Your information could be the next clue that takes us deeper into this mystery that extends far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Even with all the evidence we have already shown, leaked audio, hidden images, classified documents, and silenced astronauts, there will always be those who say, this is just a coincidence. But think with me. How many coincidences need to happen before they stop being coincidences and start being censorship? NASA, one of the most respected agencies in the world, should be open to investigations and questions. But when the subject involves UFOs, artificial structures on other planets, or unexplained sounds coming from space, the attitude changes completely. Spokespeople avoid questions, interviews are edited, broadcasts are cut off, and astronauts, they just don't talk. If this were all normal, if it were just cosmic dust or transmission failure or lens flare, why hide it? Why remove content? Why classify reports as confidential and prevent public access? The truth is that there is no point in so much secrecy if there is not something serious being protected. The official explanation always sounds vague. Technical error, image failure, unauthorized video. But when experts analyze the same data, they reach different conclusions. Objects move intelligently. Structures have geometric symmetry, and audio shows real reactions of fear and surprise. This is not accidental. This is narrative control. Have you ever seen interviews with astronauts where the most important questions simply aren't asked? Or worse, are they interrupted with embarrassed smiles or answers that say nothing? This happens because they know that there is an invisible line that cannot be crossed. And whoever crosses it disappears from the media. Yes, it's healthy to doubt. But skepticism needs to be balanced with logic. If NASA really had nothing to hide, it wouldn't need to delete videos, edit audio, or evade questions. She would just show everything. Now tell me, do you really think this is all a coincidence? Or is it already clear that we are talking about something that goes far beyond what they are willing to say? If you also feel that it is past time for the truth to come out, comment below. It's not a coincidence. Write this exactly like this, because every comment helps spread this message. And if you've ever noticed a strange moment in NASA broadcasts or interviews that disappeared, share your experience here too. Let's expose what they try to hide. If everything we've said so far is true, if astronauts really saw things, they can't tell if NASA hides discoveries, if documents are edited, if transmissions are interrupted on purpose, then the question we need to ask now goes far beyond technical data, distorted images, or leaked audio. The real question is, what does this change in our history? If there is life outside Earth, ... and our astronauts have already had direct or indirect contact with this reality, why hide it? Why not prepare humanity for something so great? Is the fear greater than the desire to reveal? Or do those in control have other interests? Interests that do not involve informing, but rather maintaining power and control over the truth. Think about it with me. For centuries, humanity has looked to the sky with wonder, curiosity, and faith. Each star represented a mystery, a distant destination, a possibility. But what if, all this time, are these possibilities already happening, just without our knowledge? What if space missions are not just scientific exploration, but part of a much larger plan, with layers that only a few have access to? Have you ever stopped to think about the impact this would have? In schools, in science, in religion, in our understanding of life? And most importantly, are we ready to know the truth? Could society deal with the fact that we were never alone? Perhaps there are older, more advanced civilizations that have been observing us, or even studying us for a long time. Now, imagine the astronauts, people who prepared for years, who risked their lives to leave Earth and see with their own eyes what is out there. People who returned changed, carrying a weight that no one should carry alone. The weight of silence. The weight of knowing they saw something so big, so transformative, but they can't tell anyone, not even to his own family. Can you imagine how this affects someone's mind and heart? Maybe that's why so many former astronauts go into isolation. Maybe that's why some people start releasing clues years later when they are retired, away from. The cameras when they feel they have nothing left to lose. It is at this moment that the truth begins to slip through the cracks. In small phrases, in averted glances, in statements that seem simple, but that carry more meaning than any official data. And now, looking at all this, we need to reflect. If this entire network of secrets, silences, and omissions is really real, what does this say about the future of humanity? Are we only living part of the story, while the other part is written behind the scenes, away from our eyes? Maybe we are being prepared little by little. Maybe all these leaks, all these coincidences, all these transmission failures are not just failures, but signs. Small doses of truth being released to see how much we can take. Because if one day this truth is fully revealed, it will change everything. It will change the way we see the universe, the planet, ourselves. It will force us to face a new reality. We are not the only ones. We never went. And perhaps we were never really in control. If this idea resonates with you, comment below. I'm ready. Write it exactly like this. I'm ready. Because only those who are ready to hear the truth can see beyond what they show. And if you feel like we're close to something big, if you feel like the veil is starting to fall, share this. Tell us what you think is behind so much secrecy. Your voice could be exactly what more people need to hear right now. What if everything we've talked about so far is just the beginning? If every piece of evidence, every silenced report, every blurred image, every cut transmission is part of an even bigger puzzle, eh? The question that remains now is no longer are they hiding something, but rather, what else is still hidden? And how long will they be able to keep it from our eyes? You've come this far because you want to know the truth. Because you feel, as I do, that there is something wrong with this official narrative. Something that doesn't close. Something that is being carefully filtered behind the scenes at NASA. Surrounded by secret protocols, gag clauses, and standardized responses. Now, with all this exposed, it's impossible to continue pretending we don't see. If you've made it this far, it's because this video impacted you in some way. Maybe it made you question everything you've ever heard about NASA. Maybe it awakened that feeling that there's something much bigger going on behind the scenes, and that the truth is being hidden from us all. And if it really touched you, then you are part of a rare group of people, those who do not accept shallow explanations, those who see beyond what is shown, those who feel that there is a greater truth waiting to be revealed. That's why I invite you now to subscribe to the channel. Here, we go deeper. We expose, investigate, connect dots, and show what they try to keep secret. And I want you with me on this journey. Activate the bell, because the next videos will reveal even more documents, leaked audios, hidden reports, and conspiracies that will leave you floored. And if you watched until the end, comment below. I am awakened. Write it exactly like that, in capital letters, because it shows that you are no longer an ordinary spectator. You are seeing the reality behind the curtain, and your comment may inspire others to wake up too. Let's spread this awareness. The truth is close, and you are already part of it.